Welcome to yet another episode of In Conversation with Tibet TV. Tibet today, as we know it as the roof of the world and the water tower of Asia, faces several ecological threats, and that has become a global concern. Excessive mining activities and the large-scale construction of dams in Tibet by China makes China the biggest contributor of these environmental degradations. To explore further on this topic, we have Neeraj Singh Manhas, a special advisor for South Asia at the Parley Policy Institute, Republic of Korea. Neeraj has also written and edited several books. Welcome to the program, Neeraj.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your kind invite. I'm looking forward to this great conversation.
Same here. So Neeraj, as you know, Tibet produces over 130 minerals, right? So to name a few, we have zinc and copper, and then gold and lithium are of like highest value. But China has been extracting these minerals for several decades now. So in terms of scale, do we have an estimation of where these minerals has reduced down to today? What is the condition like so far?
Okay, so it's a very interesting question to begin our talk on Tibet's mineral extraction, what we talk about. So as you rightly mentioned, 132. So this is a data which was also provided by Tibetan Institute, who have been working largely on the non-traditional security aspects. And the critical minerals, it's such one area where the focus has been given more, because you need to see one thing here, that all these critical minerals, they are very widely important, and they also add to the economy of the country. And likewise, what China has been doing in Tibet is also very important to see, because we have seen that China has taken a step that they also want to go from the from the charcoals to the renewable source of energies. And by 2060, the target is that how they can also be a carbon neutral free country. Similarly, in India also, like by 2070, India has targeted that how they can also be a carbon neutral free country. So this comes into a power play, that how we can shift our plan and focus from using the resources which are harmful for our for the ecosystem, and shifting that from to a renewable source of energies. And similarly, these critical minerals, like you mentioned, 132, equally becomes very important. And Tibet is such a plateau placed at a elevation of 4,500 meters, becomes very important. And this plateau has a lot of mineral resources which are yet to be extracted, which are yet to be refined, and which are yet to be procured. So there is a different stages where this can be done. So I believe that what China has been when they took illegal took over Tibet in 1950s, since then there has been a long struggle how they can also extract the minerals from Tibet. So as usual, like I remember from 1950s or 50s onwards, the strategy this started by China started, but it was on a very slow pace, I would say. And then the coming towards the 1980s and 90s, the gradually the copper, zinc, and iron ore, like more and more extraction have started taking place in the Tibet. And then after the post 2000 era, the gold rush have started more and more there. So I believe that since 2010 now, the current scenario where we are right now, and in the 14 5-year plan also, China has invested more than $22 billion. So why such kind of a huge amount of money? So China sees as this as a kind of a leverage and a strategy how they can also play a power play game with the other downstream countries or the dependent countries which are heavily dependent on China on because of these critical minerals. So I believe that all the countries which are also dependent on the critical minerals, they will have to also look into their own resources, because just having resources itself is not a big deal, but how to refine, how to procure, it's again process of thing. So I believe in that China has already made a very big leap, and the amount of the critical minerals available in the Tibet has really reduced.
Right. So you spoke on the clean energy technology, and China is so-called the largest investor of that technology, right?
Right.
But then, but that comes at a cost of social and ecological destruction, right? So there's, because of these dam construction and mining extractions, there's a lot of relocations, and then cultural heritage demolitions like monasteries and all of that. It's very evident from Tibet, right? All of that's happening. And then there's also natural disasters like earthquakes and landslides and mudslides and all of that. So my question is, do you think the namesake of producing clean energy technology justifies these irreversible damages?
Certainly, I don't think so that it justifies it, because because you mentioned now about the damming thing, and Tibet has been exploited in this way for a very, very long time now. And if you talk about the Yarlang Sangpo River, which also originates from there, we also need to see what China does in the form of 5-year plan. So I just want to remind and go back into the 13th 5-year plan, or the 12th 5-year plan. In that also they decided that they are going to construct series of dams on the Yarlang Sangpo River. But that point of a time there, the target was the upper and the middle reaches of Yarlang Sangpo. But after the 14th 5-year plan, which started in 2021 and it's going to end in 2025 itself, it was decided that they are going to construct the super dam. Although we are already having a 3 gorges dam on the Yarlang Sangpo, which is again on the Yangtze River. Yeah, but the kind of a power generation now it is going to develop. It's I remember 300 billion kilowatt annually, the amount of energy it is going to generate. So this, we need to ask this question to China, needs to ask this question to themselves, that how is it going to be possible? Like this area specifically, you see, it's very seismic zone, and which is very much fragile, making huge tunnels like into 5 to 6 tunnels with a long gap of 15 to 20 kilometers. It's going to be very disastrous to our own environment. When this Yangtze 3 gorges dam were constructed, it itself displaced millions of people, and the migration has to take place because people themselves, they feel very much threatened. So in that case, the situation would be very difficult.
Right. So speaking of construction of dams and water, as we are all aware, Tibet is the largest supplier of fresh water, especially in the South and Southeast Asia, right? A lot of these countries like Cambodia and Laos are dependent on Tibet's rivers. But then China is, so far China has constructed over 400 dams on these rivers. So how much of an ecological disruption is that? And also how does these construction of dams directly affect India's water and border security?
Okay. As I mentioned that this, I'll just mention about the latest current dam which is in the news. And yeah, Medong hydropower dam. This dam is going to generate 3x more power than the 3 gorges dam. So, and with the cost of $167 billion. And as we know that the economics of China right now, it's not that very much stable. Although we have been reading reports that there is a lot of economic collapse which is itself is happening in China. So from where this huge amount of money would come in? So that itself is, although they have said that by 2030 this Medong County dam would be totally be started or operationalized at that moment of time. But we'll have to see, because in December 2024 there were no blueprints, there was nothing discussed. But suddenly, like in 2025, I think the last month, the Chinese spokesperson, he said that we have started constructing the dam on the Medong County, and God knows how things would happen. But the real challenge would come when the dam is totally ready. And now coming to the point, the moment the dam is ready by 2030 or 30s, we'll have to see that how much consequences it adds to the lower riparian country. So when I talk about the lower riparian country in this context, India is a middle riparian country, and lower to it, Bangladesh is a lower riparian to us. So in this whole chain of chronology, we need to understand that uh, uh, if anything, a sudden flow of water, it's been released from this Medong County, how it is going to impact. And just for the knowledge of the people or the audience, this has happened in the past also, where we have tried to connect most of the connotations and the reports where the huge flood like situation has occurred in Arunachal Pradesh of India. And the secondly, when the monsoon seasons are not there, in the dry seasons we have seen that because these dams are huge dams, they also carry a huge reservoirs where it can store million tons of water. It has a huge capacity to store. So in that also we need to see that if the dam gates closed and there is no water flow and the water diversion is taking place towards the China, you talked about the fresh water, it's a source of fresh, so we are not going to have a fresh water. Although now coming to the point which is very much connected with the mining activities, in 2017, 20 and 2023, people in northeast of India, they have experienced the water is becoming dirty. The water is becoming gray and black. So the reason which was later found out by the Arunachal Pradesh government was that a lot of toxins were added to the water. So there is no fresh water availability now. The mining activities which are taking on the upper region of Tibet, they are putting up the waste residual of mining activities into the fresh water. So itself is not fit for the drinking purpose, or a lot of cattles, buffaloes, they died in northeast India in 2017. So this is a very big question, and eventually just not about India. When we also see the Bangladesh in this case, because they are dependent on us and we play a middle riparian role here, we also need to see that how much the equitable share of water they are also getting. Although India doesn't talk about the equitable share of water, because India and China, they both did not sign the International Water Law Convention. But on the same hand, India has been very cooperative when it comes to the water sharing. Likewise, in case of Bangladesh, we have seen we have signed the joint water river declaration in 1978. Then similarly in 1995, we have also signed the India Ganges Water Treaty. So it was a formal treaty which India and Bangladesh have adhered. But in case of India and China, in this case, there is no formal treaty.
Right. So as you mentioned, the Brahmaputra river directly flows into Arunachal Pradesh, and now China is building this Medok hydropower dam on Brahmaputra. So similarly, in the name of infrastructure development, China has built a lot of train lines in Tibet. Right. There's one from Sichuan to Lhasa to Ningchi, which borders Arunachal Pradesh, right? Again, and then the planning in the future is to build Xinjiang Tibet Railway, which will pass through Ladakh and then Aksai Chin in Kashmir. These are sensitive areas. So if something like that happens in the future and there's a border tension and water security tension, is India ready to tackle China?
Yeah, definitely. I believe that India is ready to tackle these challenges. But the impact of water when it is released from a high altitude, it will not have more impact in Arunachal, but has a more impact in Assam, where the river Yarlang Sampo is originally called as Brahmaputra. But in Arunachal Pradesh, this Yarlang Sampo, when it enters, it's called as Siang River. But also to the Medong County, why it is important? Because it's important to our national security also, because this Medong County is very much near to the Arunachal Pradesh LAC border. Yeah. And that itself is a question of border security and the infrastructure also, which you mentioned about the railway lines. Of course, what China have been doing it along the LACs have been very much instrumental. And, hiring the Tibetan refugees to join army and establishing the artificial villages near the border areas, it's a cause of concern. So similarly, on this line, India also tried to have a lot of infrastructure development on the western sector of Ladakh, on the central sector of where the Sikkim and Tri Junction is there, and on the eastern sector also where the Arunachal Pradesh is there. So just want to tell you that India also tried to have a very important VVP program, Village Vibrant program, which was to to develop the infrastructure of border villages which are there. So for example, also setting up the narrative, which been there in the border villages. So for example, there is a in Himachal, you have seen that there is a last village. So instead of saying a last village, we'll say our first village. Okay, so from where the narrative building gets started. So in that way also, India have also started working in narrative building with China. Secondly, on the Shiokang villages, what China have done, we have also started constructing our airfields, how we can also make more visibility of our things, weaponry, or even the people, because we need to connect people to people. And northeast itself is a very important juncture where we have seen that China also tries to say that Arunachal is a southern Tibet to them. So we need to highlight more and more how we can also get rid of such kind of a changing of names in the Tibet or the Indian borders. So in that way, China have tried their level best how they can also psychologically try to manipulate the whole scenario. But India, I think, with India's advancement and economically development, we have been able to make up most of it. But still, there are a lot of things which we need to work upon right now. And similarly, on the Medong County itself, if this gets operationalized in by 2030s, so things would be very much hefty, like very much in terms of consequences. But similarly, I just want to tell you that India also planned to have a countermeasure to it. We have also tried to construct the Upper Siang region, where we are also targeting that we can also connect that, utilize this water for a clean energy and for the utility of the people and the development. So we are constructing over Upper Siang dam project over there. So this will act as a buffer zone. If any sudden release of water comes from the upper riparian, so this would act as a buffer. So it can also give us some time to save our people, and we can mitigate our people from that place of time. And similarly, the early warning system has been very much useful in this case also, where ISRO satellite system have also warned us that at what time we also need to be very much careful during the monsoon time or the flood like situation comes, how we can also take some countermeasures in that way. So I believe that and our renewable goal is also to connect the state electricity grid with the national grid system. So that is how it is also going to make the more development in the northeast state also. And in a way, I think in this way we are going to strategize and counter it for a long time.
Right. So speaking of these illegal minings and construction of dams, huge dams, what are some international laws that China continues to violate? Because there's no transparent policy from China's side, right? So also, what can the international community come together to form these bi or multilateral mechanisms to prevent future disasters?
Okay, so in terms of international law, I don't see any kind of international law existing in this way, where what China has been adhering to, because as I said, that from 1915 onwards, that kind of a strategy was there from their Mao Zedong's ideology, how they can also utilize the critical minerals as well as the water. The indigenous Tibetan people have been facing consequences over there, and there has been a large number of huge protests since 2010, where people have self-immolated themselves, and people have come out for their cause, but they are not able, their voices were never ever heard by the PLA. So I think the critical minerals itself now, and 2023 rare earth elements itself, which is a subgroup of critical minerals, becomes very, very important, because that's how the major weaponry, the major the global supply chain is dependent on that, and China is a global leader in it. Even with the US tariffs which Donald Trump put on China, so China reacted it as a leverage. They said that if you are going to put a heavy leverage on us, we are also going to stop the rare earth elements importing to the United States. So that's how the geopolitical angle has also now come, because China knows that the world would be dependent on the critical minerals, and rare earth elements is the need of the hour where China is focusing now.
So that leads to the question, what are some of the international laws that the international community should unanimously come together and form to prevent future disasters?
So in terms of the transboundary river issues, there are two international laws which are there. Like, one is the International Water Law Treaty of Convention, which is signed in 1992. Another one is on 1997. Both talks about the International Water Law Convention, but there has been a lot of new countries which have recently, like Bangladesh has become a new country to be a part of it. But both India and China are not a subject to a party of this international law.
Right. To sum it up, as I said right in the beginning of my introduction, Tibet, as we call it, the roof of the world and water tower of Asia, anything that happens to Tibet means there's disasters and ecological disruptions followed throughout the globe. So that means the international community needs to stand up and do something about it with China, because there's nothing, because what China is going to do next, no one knows, right?
Definitely. Thanks a lot for that. And I guess roof of the top, definitely it will always remain that only, because we are millions of lives depends on that. And if anything happens over there, definitely we'll witness. We have been witnessing the huge impact and consequences of it. But certainly it's a high time, rather than talking and discussing or making the policy, we need to act on it. We need to make certain level of the entries, how we can also add the Tibetan peoples into it, because they are the indigenous people who know the area more, who have been a part of that. They are born and brought up there. So I believe that just adding up the Chinese connotation here will not add a value, but certainly this plateau is very important to us, and we need to preserve it as soon as possible, because now the climate change is coming to the action. Whatever the huge impact of glacier melt is happening, it is again adding a depletion of water security in the water tower. So just to counter that, the climate security and the water security and the critical minerals are very much interlinked with that. So if we have to safeguard our climate, we also need to safeguard our environment. If climate is safe, the water itself will be saved in that way. And if the water is safe, we'll able to save our critical minerals in that way for our upcoming future.
So thank you so much, Neeraj, for speaking to Tibet TV.
Thank you so much for the time. Thank you so much.
That is all for this episode of In Conversation with Tibet TV. I will see you in the next one.